So in 2017, let's kind of talk about where you were at that point. Like what was life like at that point?
So essentially, yeah, I joined your training course in 2017, which, so at the time I was still working my 9 to 5 office job. So way back, like almost 4 years now. And so I was working the office job. I was still playing with my punk rock band at the time. And so I started looking kind of at ways of making money online, basically so that I could leave the office job and start like touring around with my band. Essentially, that was like the main big idea that got me started, yeah, like on the online path, basically. And then I stumbled upon a few different training courses. None of them really worked. I think like the first training course that kind of got me to learn like the very basics of SEO was the Rankings Institute by Andrew Hansen, which was all about like affiliate websites and how to kind of use SEO to grow like your site. That was, yeah, way like in like 2016, I think. But then, so I started like working on my own affiliate website, which was, it's kind of funny in like the women's health space. So it was all about like epilators, hair removal stuff, and all of that. So I started, yeah, kind of learning and practicing a little bit of the SEO stuff on my own website. I was able to get that website like from zero to like, yeah, I think it was like between $300 and $500 per month from Amazon affiliate. And so at that point, I decided that I kind of needed like a bit more advanced training compared to just the affiliate stuff. And that's when I stumbled upon, yeah, basically like your training course. And so I decided to keep working on that same affiliate website to maybe like be able to grow it to until like $1,000 per month so that I could leave the office job and start doing this stuff full time, basically. At the same time, I got hired by the same guy from like the original training course that I took. He hired me to work as like an SEO content manager for this like very big kind of authority website that he had. And so I was doing like everything from like content strategy, content creation, managing like writers. And this site was publishing like a ton of very high quality content from like scientists. And so like, yeah, very good and highly like research content. But yeah, we basically ended up onto a point where this content wasn't ranking at all. And so we realized that content alone doesn't do a lot. And you really need to work on link building at some point, right? And so this is basically when this guy basically put me in charge of sort of creating the link building system for this website. And so I started like coming up with a few like systems and processes for link building. In the first like year or so, I was doing everything by myself, managing all of the emails, sending and stuff, and replying, basically negotiating with people. And then I was able to kind of put everything down into kind of a systematized process. Then, as I said, I joined like your training course, and I was finally kind of able to see how an agency can create systems and processes to be able to delegate stuff to other people so that you don't have to do the job anymore. And so that's was kind of like my realization. So I finally thought like, so if I can get somebody else to do this thing for one website, I can maybe hire a bunch of people and get this done for multiple clients, right? And basically get paid from all of these clients instead of just one client and one website. So essentially, yeah, I was able to use like your training course to create a couple of systems, especially like all around SEO. I think in the beginning, I was interested in doing, yeah, basically everything SEO. So I was interested in your content audit process, in the SEO audit process, and basically all of the, yeah, kind of mini processes and trainings that you had like at the time. So I really liked the systematized approach that you had, all of the spreadsheet and everything very like well organized. So yeah, I basically started looking for clients for SEO. With these processes, I knew that I could hire people to delegate like most of this stuff, but I wasn't really lucky in that. And so that's when I got in touch with my brother. So my brother was already working as a copywriter for SaaS companies. Okay. And so he like was telling me how good it was to work with like most software companies for a couple of reasons. So firstly, like most software companies now are like managed by, for the most part, it's young people. And so they know what SEO is, they know what link building is, they know when they need it and why. So with these kind of companies, I wouldn't have to do the hard sell and really try to explain what link building is compared maybe with like a local business, something like that, where they don't even have a website. So it's really hard to explain to them what link building is. Because yeah, it's also important to mention that I really started to get passionate about link building and the whole like strategy aspect. So I kind of decided that that was where I wanted to end up. And basically, yeah, like only focus on link building. So, and yeah, the other reason that I really liked working with software companies is because in some aspects, it was similar to that affiliate site that I was working for. So most companies have the content production and publishing team kind of in place, but they lack usually the expertise or the time or the team members to like basically to do the promotion. So I kind of come up like with this kind of idea to become sort of like a remote content promotion team for SaaS companies. So we basically get to work with them as kind of like their remote team that basically takes the content that they like already have on the site, and we try to build backlinks to that content. So that's kind of how I ended up in software companies and specializing in link building as well. I really liked the idea of selling just one thing, kind of simple to explain, kind of simple to sell, and try to become the best kind of agency basically in this particular thing that we do.
Right. Yeah. I remember, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2018 or so. You reached out to me. You're like, "Hey, I have this idea," and you were thinking about how to, niche down further. And I was like, "Yeah, you you should," because it's so incredibly hard to compete with just broad SEO agency, stuff, because there's a lot of big players. So let's talk about a little bit of that transition. So you went from wanting to be basically the big SEO agency, like you want to do that. What was the part where you're like, this is probably not going to be the best thing and I should probably like niche down? What was that kind of like paradigm shift you had there?
So yeah, at first, I guess I really liked the fact that with links, it was a bit more simple to sell, especially into market, because I could say we sell like 10 links per month. It costs this, and you get like exactly these kind of links with these metrics. So very simple to sell, compared to SEO, where you really kind of have to explain, like all the traffic gains. And basically, it's kind of hard to be able to guarantee first, like the results.
Yeah.
And then, there's a whole lot of things, like different things that you need to be really good at. And I didn't have the team in place still. While with link building, I basically had my system in place. I just needed to find somebody to start delegating slowly the most kind of like mechanical parts, like at first, and then slowly getting like myself out of the daily work as well. But I guess the most attractive thing with link building was the simplicity, and just try to basically being able to focus on one thing and keep improving on that thing, which is what we're still doing. Like now, after like 3 years, we're still there, and every day trying to improve the service and the process, and try to find like new ways to do stuff and all of this. Because I think that at the end of the day, like the more time you spend like in a space, the better like you're gonna become at that. And so it's really difficult with SEO. You really need to be essentially in touch with a bunch of different kind of areas, and follow the news, especially with all like the Google updates and all that stuff, technical. So there's a lot of new stuff that essentially came into play as well, like recently. So everything that has to do with like voice search and all of that. So there's a lot of stuff that you really need to be focused on basically everything. And it's really hard to be good at everything. So I just thought, like, why can't I just be the best at one thing, right? That's probably like easier. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah, and that's super smart. So one thing that's interesting about what you said is, when you're trying to pitch SEO services, the primary thing that matters the most are the results, right? Like that's that's really what matters. Like that's everything goes back to that. Like, hey, these are the results that the opportunities that are here. So when you're selling, you're probably not really pitching the results because you don't really control the early stages of that process. You're just coming in at the end. So someone could technically get incredible links, but have a poor foundation, and the links may not have much of an impact. So how have you kind of like worked around that? And are you focused more on just the deliverables, not so much the results? Like how do you work through that?
So I think in the beginning, I was just trying to focus on the deliverables. So just trying to tell them, hey, we're going to sell like the best links that we can sell to you, and the rest is up to you. But then in the end, I noticed that this was kind of hindering like our progress as well, because like, yeah, basically if our clients is not having like very good results, yeah, kind of in short, it's very hard for me to get a case study as well. So it's very hard like for me to promote myself as well. And so then I really started nailing in my positioning and trying to be, basically to be very good at selecting clients. So now we have like specific kind of guidelines and like a process that we follow every time to be able to select a client that we know can be successful with our process, essentially. So yeah, basically like the other day, I got approached by an affiliate website. The guy said that they had like a huge budget, like 20K for like a bunch of different websites. But honestly, so that was like a very appealing kind of project, right? Because that's a lot of revenue in one go, basically. But at the end of the day, I knew that we are not super good at this stuff for affiliate websites. We are good at doing it with software companies, which is where we specialized and where we created the process that we do basically around. And so I had to like deny with this guy and like basically sent them like to another friend that does this stuff for affiliate websites. And so, yeah, like everything, like all of this. So being able to choose the right type of client where you can do like the best job that you can do is really important, I think.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's talk a little about that client qualification process. So what does that look like? What are certain things that you're looking for to try to find the ideal client for you?
So for us specifically, because we work with software companies, we have identified basically the main 4 buckets of pages that our software companies have, basically. And so these are like obviously the homepage should be like well optimized for the main target keyword, like cold email software, for example. And then they usually have the feature pages or some use case pages. Then they have the blog with all of the informational content at top and middle of the funnel. And then they have maybe some linkable assets like our resource section with like ebooks or infographics or research pieces and all that. So these are the main 4 buckets of pages that a company that we want to work with should have. So that's the first kind of qualification, like making sure that they have the classic SaaS setup in place, basically. Second thing is that they should be publishing a lot of content like already on the blog. And we specifically look at informational content here because it's very hard. It's kind of hard to promote, like with our system, to promote like a landing page or a sales page. So we want to make sure that these people are looking for a way to consistently promote their informational content. And so we want to make sure that they have at least maybe 5 to 10 articles published on the website and that the quality of these articles is pretty good. So then we go a bit more in depth. We look at like the content depth, content quality, if the content is visually appealing. So we make sure that maybe they're using like custom images, that there's some research behind the content. And lastly, we take maybe like their top 5 pages. So the pages that are bringing them like the most traffic, and we make sure that they are targeting a keyword with like search traffic potential, that the content is satisfying content type and search intent for that specific keyword. And lastly, we make sure that they can kind of compete like in the rankings, especially if they maybe told us that they want to rank like the top 3 pages that they have, and we see that they're very competitive, and so the budget that they have is not very good for the goals. In that case, we might want to reassess and maybe send them like a different proposal or something like that. But yeah, these are the main kind of qualification things that we look at, so that they have the framework with all the classic pages in place, that they are publishing content, and that this content is really good and well targeted. But yeah, basically, they just like the whole gist of this is that they should just be missing the links.
Right.
Basically, so that's where we can come in and help them.
Yeah, that's a terrific process, and it's putting you in a position to win, right? So like instead of just taking everyone on and putting yourself in situations where you may not win, you're setting yourself up for success, and you're setting them up for success too. So, do you offer any type of like, so let's say they sign on and there are some challenges that they need to overcome. Maybe the content's not as high quality. Maybe the architecture isn't great. Maybe varying issues. How much support do you offer on that front? Or is it like pure like, hey, you got to go to Joe to fix that, and we only handle this? How rigid do you get with that?
So yeah, basically what we do is we offer some kind of on-page support. So I might tell them, let's say that we're working on a specific page, and I see that like the other pages that are ranking on page 1 for the target keyword are like 10 times better than the page that they have. In that case, I might point like some things that they can improve in the content. So I might tell them this content needs to be longer. It needs to better satisfy the search intent, because, for example, like all the pages that are ranking on page 1 for the target keyword are maybe list like the list kind of articles, top 10 tools for this and for that, and they have a blog article. So in that case, the content type and the search intent is not very well matching, basically. So I might tell them, like, you need to include a list inside this article so that it better matches the other pages that are ranking on page 1, basically. Sure. So stuff like this, basically try to see what other pages are doing, the pages that are ranking higher than them, try to emulate them and do it better or different, basically. So this is one thing that I learned from you, the fact of doing stuff either better or different than what other people are doing. Because because a lot of times I see people that mention the fact of doing stuff better, but the fact of doing it different is not very often mentioned as well. And it's something that I think it's very important and that a lot of times works. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I obviously agree with that. But yeah, I mean, that's something I realized a long time ago, because there's always been like this idea that we should do this skyscraper, which I think is good for beginners because it teaches the right mindset that we're trying to create something more in depth. But really, when you do that, you're just competing in a kind of a red ocean, right? So it's just it's a constant battle of who writes the longest, deepest content. But in reality, you can beat someone just by creating something radically different. For that primary keyword. So that's why when I discovered that, it was like mind blowing. So let's talk about the process in which you go through for client acquisition. So where are your potential leads coming from? Are they coming from referrals? Are they coming organically? Where are they coming from?
So yeah, that's kind of been our main kind of area of friction like recently, because for the first 2-3 years we've only gotten like leads from referral, from maybe inbound, from a few different kind of private groups that I'm part of. Some I've done some outreach, but like very like here and there, so nothing too systematic. And so this is kind of like where we're like struggling a little bit now. For the most part, it's still like referrals. I've been just the fact that we are like the expert in link building for SaaS. It was really good for us because we are still getting like a lot of referrals from maybe like marketing consultants that are working with software companies. We've also worked with like 3 or 4 different content marketing agencies for SaaS that don't do link building, and so they need like the extra part, and so basically they sent us their client.
Is that white label? Is that white labeled?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for some, we've been doing like a white label thing where we basically don't talk to their clients directly, and some others just like sent us their clients like to work directly. So it worked really well, but I realized that we need like a more systematic system basically in place. So I started doing some cold email now, both in terms of like reaching out to my dream clients, so like very good companies that I would love to work with, and another thing that I started doing recently is reaching out to like potential partners, so either like podcasts kind of interviews, and basically all of these are partners that are working with my target market. So I would reach out to a few like SaaS podcasts to get featured in there and talk about content promotion and link building and why SaaS companies are not doing it well. Then I reached out to a bunch of like freelance writers for SaaS, and I was like, hey, do you know if like your clients have a system in place to consistently promote the content that you are creating for them? And so like for the most part, they will say, no, like I don't really know. Like I send like my articles to them, but then I don't really know what they do with them. And so, yeah, they would basically introduce me to their clients, and I would like explain how we can help them and kind of create like basically like a network of people that I can reach out to for help, and that we can kind of exchange client. I can basically send them the clients that are not a good fit for me because they don't have the content in place, and they can send me the clients that have the content but don't have the promotion, essentially.
Okay, got it. Yeah, those are definitely good ideas. So aside from traffic, so once we have traffic, what's the next stage of that process? So they go to an application, and then where is it? Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the actual like the specific process of client, basically the onboarding, client sales, essentially. So I basically do a fit finder call. Essentially, is basically like a very quick, short call where I just try to understand if there's a fit, like to work together. So if like the client is matching all of our requirements that I explained before, and so if they have the budget as well, this is another thing that I ask them. And basically at the end of this call, I either tell them, yes, like you're a fit, let's book the second call, and no, you're not a fit. I can maybe introduce you to some of my like writers friend or content strategist friend that can help you with the content. And so if they are a fit, then we get on the second call, which is basically kind of a more like strategic call where I explain them like exactly how we do things. I show them my process and how we can help them essentially like reach their goals. So I try to find out their like short-term and long-term goals as well, to be able to get them on with. And this is something else that I really started learning from experience, from working with clients, that the main thing that you need to do is try to get clients like on board for the long term, especially with link building. It takes such a long time for the links to like bring them a result that for the most part, like most clients would maybe like decide to randomly stop like after 3 months, because maybe they think they have put out like 80% of the effort and only gotten 20% of the result. But the problem with link building is that it's kind of exponential. So you start off very slow, it takes a long time, and then it kind of like explode. So the thing that I now try to do a lot better is to really kind of explain to the clients that they need a strategy in place to be able to consistently promote their content and to get to the point where they can follow the curve and get the exponential results. So now I try to really close clients for like a minimum of 6 to 12 months. So that's another thing that we're trying to do differently compared to most link building agency. We really try not to be just a vendor that sell links, but basically try to be like a partner with the company.
Right. Okay. So after you've had that initial discovery call and you're like, okay, this person, they've met all our criteria. The next call is that, are you actually developing a proposal for that following call, or is it still like discovery part 2? So
it's basically discovery part 2.
Okay.
I actually never do like a full proposal, like a custom proposal, because that's something that I learned from the beginning. So in the beginning, I was actually doing custom proposal, but in the end, I noticed that I was basically doing the same things for our clients, because essentially link building, content promotion is not like super complicated where you need to do custom stuff for each client, especially for us, since we only work with software companies and we make sure that they have the criteria that work for us. So in the end, it's kind of doing the same thing over and over for a different kind of companies that's basically like in a different niche. So we have a strategy and a plan in place for each of those 4 types of pages that I mentioned before. And essentially, I basically just take a look at which of these 4 buckets the client need help with the most. And that's where we focus like the main part of our strategy. So let's say that the clients have a low domain rating. So in that case, we're going to focus like most of the initial strategy in building backlinks to their homepage. And that means that we're going to have to get them featured in all of those list articles, best 10 software companies for this, best 7 tools for that, right? So that's going to be the initial part of the strategy because they lack the domain rating. And then once they grew the domain rating, we can then focus on increasing the traffic and the backlinks to their other content, which is usually like the blog articles. So yeah, the second discovery call is basically me just going through essentially like a few of these like frameworks that we already have. So it kind of looks like really cool and kind of custom to them, but honestly, it's essentially the same thing that I go over like with other companies, just like I do. Basically do that with their site essentially.
Right. So on that second discovery call, are you actually trying to close on the call, or are you going into another phase where you actually go into the close process?
So I essentially try to close them on this call. I try to get them to like a yes or no, basically. But then, like after the call, I also send them a call recap kind of email with everything that we talked about, the recording, all of the slides that I showed them during the call. And I also send them a few case studies that I have. So that's essentially my proposal, you could say, but it's not custom. It's essentially like a recap of the second, the discovery call that we've done with a bunch of marketing material, basically.
Okay. So in a situation where it is definitely a good fit, you can tell they're on board on that call. Are you actually trying to collect credit card information on the call, or are you setting them to a checkout page or something?
No. So that's something that we don't do like as of now. And I don't know if that's a good idea. Maybe yes. I don't know. Maybe we should do it. But yeah, what we do now is I get them to say yes via email as well, besides the call. And then I send them all of the onboarding stuff. So we have like a service agreement that I send them. And when they sign the agreement, then I send them the invoice for month 1 and they pay the invoice. And then we get started from there.
I see. Okay. Good to know. And then what about the people who you had a really good call with? It felt like everything was, these ones, everything's going well. You're like, I got this guy closed. It's always the ones you think you're going to close where it doesn't happen. So, so what's the process at that point where you like thought it was on board? You send them the follow-up email, explain the sales call and all the good stuff, sending them the assets. Do you have a follow-up process in place, or is it kind of just like, hey, if you want to work with us, you can come back to us. If you don't, then that's it. What do you do?
So we're usually pretty lucky in the sense that we have kind of a wait list now of people. And so what I usually tell them is, can you please give me like your yes or no, your confirmation, like within a week? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise I will have to essentially tap into the wait list and we will have to work with someone else.
That's great. Yeah, that's the only thing that's a good that's a good scarcity urgency tactic. Yeah, that's smart. Even though it is true, it's a really that's a really good a good tactic. So the next thing I'm thinking about is retention, because obviously, you mentioned that you don't want to be viewed as a vendor, which is super, super smart, because you never want to be perceived as a vendor because you're disposable, right? So like you don't want to be, I'm sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't want to be the Hoth, or you don't want to be Fat Joe, you don't want to be Rhino, you don't want to be those guys, because they're really vendors and you can just stop using them at any point, and on and off. You probably want to have like a really good relationship with the client that you could stay, have them working with you for 1 to 2 years. So how are you going about that process of like building that relationship and trying to change the perception from just a vendor to, hey, I'm a guy like you that you actually need if you guys want to continue to succeed?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a very good question. So like a few mistakes that we have done like in the beginning. Essentially, when I started and I was only focusing on the links, I basically had my Google Sheet where I basically put the live links for the clients and well, maybe like the tasks and the stuff that we were doing like on a daily basis. But essentially the client needed to actually manually like log in like into Google Drive to check the results. So I didn't have like anything in place, no reports, nothing at all. And basically what happened is that like even if the results were like really good because the links were good, the clients kind of like I found out that the clients kind of need to be guided and to always be pampered like a little bit. And so even if they have the sheet and they can essentially take a look at like at the sheet whenever they want, the problem is that they don't do it. So they maybe get to the end of the month because they have a lot of stuff going on already, especially in software companies, they marketing, like paid, and a bunch of different things. So they might get to the end of the month and they might remember, oh, there's the link builder, Growth Gorilla. I wonder if they're doing their job or not. So they would like maybe go like check the sheet, see the link, but that doesn't really tell them much. So the first thing that I started like changing and trying to improve is to add some intentional touch points with the clients to be able to kind of like avoid like, basically all of these kind of dips. Basically dips in interest basically on the side of the clients. Because what happens is that they get started and they are like very excited. So you can see it like this. And then after a few weeks, because the links take a while to start getting in, then their interest like goes down like this. And basically they get to the end of the month, they are here, for example. And so you really need to like surprise them to be able to get the interest back up. And so basically what we've done is we started like introducing this intentional kind of interaction. So we do like weekly kind of email reports, which is like a super simple kind of email just outlining the overview. So we might tell them, hey, this week, like you have 2 live links and we've done this campaign. Without this campaign, we noticed that the reply rate has increased a little bit. So it's a bunch of data from the campaign. And maybe sometimes I might do like a quick 10 minutes screen share video, basically of me going over like what's happening. Because even if they see the data, it's very important that you also explain the data to them, because maybe like for them, it doesn't mean anything by itself. So if you maybe enrich the data with like the story of what's happening, basically that's going to be like way more impactful for the clients. And so we have these weekly kind of reports, like check-in kind of emails. Then we included monthly reports, which is basically a PDF of all of the outreach stats of links and everything that we've done. And then we also do quarterly review calls to kind of go over what happened in the past like 3 months and plan the next 3 months together. So that's kind of also a very good strategy to be able to retain the clients and keep like working with them, because you show them that you have a strategy in place, that you know what's going to happen for the next 3-6 months and something like that. And so instead of just like, basically hoping that they're going to be happy with the links basically every month, we now try to support them and to show them that we have like the whole system kind of in check, basically.
Yeah, that's super, super smart. Going back to the Google Sheets thing, because, at one point we had a client and he was like so anti-technology, like he just didn't want to do that. And so one time I sent him, it was like in the early stages of our campaign, I was like, hey, we got a Google Sheet where you can go and check everything. And then he replied, like, I don't want this effing Google Sheet. I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Like, now I understand why you don't want this. But it's funny, like no one wants to go, like these clients don't want to go and check Google Sheet. Like even if you had every single thing that you've ever had about their campaign in that Google Sheet, for some reason, like nothing beats just sending them an email, just saying like, hey, this is what we've done, or sending a Loom video like you're doing. Absolutely the smartest thing. When I made that change in my business, oh my gosh, huge difference in client retention, the relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And like the thing that I noticed is that like it's also kind of easy to partially delegate like all this stuff.
Right.
So I now have a process that I'm working with as well. I think I basically completed it last week to be able to delegate these weekly kind of emails as well. So for the most part, in the beginning, I thought that it was stuff that only I could do because basically only I can know the strategy and can talk to the clients, right? Because I like basically we're at the point where I still don't have like an account manager for clients, so it's basically still me talking to the client. But yeah, then like I basically thought about it a little bit, and I noticed that it's a process that it's pretty easy to delegate, at least like the data collection. So I can have my project manager basically creating like the draft for this email with all of the data, and then I can only maybe do the like the screen share video, the Loom videos, like you said, and basically kind of add just like the final touch basically to the email, but most of the boring and time-consuming data collection has been done already.
Right. So do you have, so obviously a lot of that's all manual, right? So the weekly stuff is manual, the monthly report is manual, and the quarterly call obviously is all manual activity. Do you have, because I'm just thinking through like one thing that would be helpful would be to have like an education sequence that's like an automated email that goes out to the client that says like, hey, in the first month, things will be a little bit slower, just kind of working with the expectations that they have. And then, like, as you mentioned, link building, once it gets going, there's kind of a snowball effect. There's kind of a compound effect over time. So like, have you ever considered building out kind of like an education sequence like that to just hamper down expectations a little bit?
Yeah, that's a very good idea. I've been considering. I still didn't get like the time to actually do it, but it's something that sooner or later I would want to do. And especially because I noticed that like no matter how many times I explain the same things to the client, so I can maybe tell it to them on the first like fit finder call, then say to them again on the discovery call that link building takes a long time. This is how we do it, and it's gonna be like this and like that. But they still somehow forget. I don't know. So it's very useful to keep like repeating it to them, and so that's a very good idea. It's probably something that I might get on to do in like maybe Q3 or Q4 of this year.
Yeah. And it's, just those weekly touch points are so huge because like people don't realize like a week is a long time. Like when we're thinking we're like a week is nothing, but like in the view of a client's, like think about how much a SaaS company is dealing with in the course of 1 week. It's probably astronomical. So like if they don't hear from you for 2 weeks or a month, that feels like 5 years to them because time is all relative. So I think that's super, super smart. You're doing. Have you seen a big shift from when you weren't doing that to when you're doing it now? Do you feel like you've seen, and it's hard to quantify, right? But have you seen relationships have gotten a little bit better?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing that we're really striving to work like towards, especially with these touch points, is to be seen by the clients not as a vendor, but as like an expert kind of, basically like an expert kind of agency, like more like a partner. And I gotta say that I definitely saw that. So I can see like the way the clients like reply to the emails. They're very like, even if nothing super big has happened, like maybe in the week, but they are still kind of happy just because we are in touch and they are involved into the process. So it kind of makes them feel part like of the process as well, especially because for the most part, the people I talk to is usually the marketing manager. So they are managing all the marketing efforts of these like software companies, and they need like to report to the VP of marketing or maybe the founder directly sometimes. So it's good for them to have basically some kind of information that they can send over to like the other people that's above them in the chart essentially. So they feel happy, they feel like involved into the process, and it's really like we are basically kind of essentially like an outsourced part of their business basically.
Right. Yeah. And I think you don't want to get in a situation where they're thinking about what you're doing. Like, I
Yeah,
think as long as you're on top of it and, you're the one that's sending the emails, you're the one being proactive, they're never going to be in that mindset like, what is Alan doing? Like, what are they doing?
exactly.
Because if they get to that point, you obviously probably have
Yeah,
experienced this. It's hard to
yeah.
get back.
Yeah, exactly. The moment that you get the famous email, hey, like what's going on with our
Yeah.
links? That's kind of like the moment that everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And like you can expect that maybe 1-2 months later, yeah, they're gonna quit working with you for the most part, unless you do something extraordinary. But that moment, like their trust has already kind of broken. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to get it back. And you you really need to stay on top of this and try to never get to that moment, basically.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you have a good process in place to prevent that. I want to go back to something you said in the beginning about how you picked SaaS companies because they're young, kind of a younger crowd, and there's more buy-in. Let's just say they get it. To keep it simple. So it's really funny you say that, because the last interview I did with Keval, he works with only Shopify websites. And he said the same exact thing. He said he picked that industry because people who start Shopify websites, they just kind of like get it. So, so was that a really big determining factor for you, or did that just kind of like, once you started doing it, you just kind of like realize that like, hey, oh yeah, this is actually much better because I don't have to explain why links are valuable. Because if you had a local business, obviously explaining that can be challenging. So
Yeah, I think I basically started from the very beginning with this idea because my brother was already working with these kind of people. And so he told me, yeah, basically how they think and how they see SEO and link building already. So I had a pretty good idea of what they're looking for and why they are looking for link building or SEO maybe. And then especially with the fact that we got like all of these qualifiers in place, like I basically know that if they have content that's not ranking, chances are that they might be looking for links.
right.
So that alone is a pretty good indication that they are basically already looking for what we sell. And the fact that they are like technology company, usually means that they are like tech savvy, and so they're usually like on top of the marketing trends and what's going on. So yeah.
Sure. So what do you feel about, do you feel like there's a ceiling for what, where your current niche is? Like, do you feel like there's a certain level where it's going to be tough to kind of break out of that given the kind of the angle you've taken? Do you get the question I'm kind of asking?
So I mean, if you're talking in terms of the kind of clients that we work with, so far we've always worked with like a middle-sized company, I would say. So the target company that we want to work with is usually a company that's doing like 1 million in recurring like annual revenue, like usually, or more. So nothing like super huge. It's usually a company that has a team in between like 10 and 30 people, maybe. So the thing that I'm kind of curious to see now is basically like if we can scale like all of this kind of up and work with bigger companies. Because the thing is, I've got in touch with a few bigger companies. I think last year, SEMrush reached out to me, and basically they wanted like a huge amount of links, especially because they already get like thousands of links like every month.
Yeah.
So you really need to scale things up to be able to satisfy that request. And that's something that at this point, we don't have the infrastructures in place, especially with like email sending. Like you really need to do a lot more quantity while still keeping the quality, because these people for sure don't want to pay for links. And so that's something that you really need to be aware of.
Yeah.
You need to send out like a ton of quality, like emails, and really being able to scale everything up. And so this is something that for now we still can't do. So we're still focused on kind of like the middle range company now.
Yeah. So it seems like you're really taking the smart route by focusing heavily on building out that infrastructure before trying to hit growth mode. Because I feel like a lot of us were so focused on getting new clients and growing our revenue, but sometimes the best thing to do is just focus on the product, the service itself, and work on that over time. And that's really the hard work, is getting that right. But if you get that right, it makes everything else easier. So it seems like the path for you would be going after bigger retainers, bigger contracts would be how you would, go to the next level, it would seem. Is that accurate?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think so far, like for now, there's a few things that we can try to do. So for one, we can increase our pricing, because I've heard like a lot of people that told me that we charge not enough for everything that we offer.
Right.
So that's one thing that we can do. The other thing is maybe try to cut on some extra costs. So far what we do is we do pay for some of the backlinks for clients, and we we obviously do like a whole kind of research process and qualification process for the sites that we do pay for. But the thing is that so far we covered like all of the costs for the links that we can basically cover with a retainer. And so something that we might be able to do like in the future is either try to be more aggressive, maybe with the negotiation for the price of the links. And the other thing is probably try to hand like all of the, basically the paid links that we can't cover like over to the clients, and they can decide essentially if they want to do them or not. And so there's a bunch of things that we can do. Also, we recently moved to Pitchbox for outreach, which is like the tool that we use now.
Yep.
And in the past, we used a bunch of like different tools. I think it was like 6-7 different tools that we were using with like a bunch of scripts and Google Sheets, and it was very like tedious. So now we only use one tool, which is Pitchbox, and Ahrefs for the analysis and everything else that we do, which kind of allowed us to cut on some other costs. And so, I mean, the only thing that we can do now is probably try to increase the revenue by increasing the pricing and cut on some of these costs here.
Right. Yeah. So are you right now, as it stands, let's say a website's requesting $95 for a placement. Are you guys taking that cost on within the retainer right now?
Yeah. So what we do is we cover basically one link from each basically of the sites for each client, and the cost of the link should be under $100 usually. And obviously, like we try to negotiate it down as much as we can. So we have a whole process for negotiation and for qualification as well. So for every site that's asking for money for the paid links, for one, it should be the last resort. So we have a bunch of processes and basically a few other things that we offer in return for the links. So usually for a software companies could be like a free trial, basically like of the software, or like an affiliate link, or maybe a link exchange. And we are really careful with those as well. And lastly, it's money, basically, if that's the last resort. And we have a process for qualification. So we make sure that the site is not a spammy site, that it's managed by real people. We check their anchor text profile. We check the backlinks that they have, and we check that the traffic is not going down, because it might mean that it's being penalized. And so we check all these things. If all of this is good, then we negotiate on the price, and usually we can get it down pretty good, like pretty well. So usually from the price that they say, we can normally get it down to like 50% of what they say usually.
Interesting. Okay, so what is that negotiation process then? Very interesting.
It's basically a set of emails. So we are like, hey, we are a bootstrapped company, and our budget for this stuff is only X. Could you like help us?
Are you reaching out from the software company?
Yeah.
As the software company? Okay.
Yeah. So what we do with clients is we either we have them create like either a persona, like a fake persona, or sometimes we are also using the founder like directly, or the marketing manager's name. It basically depends on what they want to do. So that's up to them essentially. And once we have their approval to do all of this negotiation, we basically follow this process, which is essentially try to aim as low as possible, and basically name a price that still kind of makes sense because at the end of the day, like it doesn't take much for somebody to just get in there and place a link. So we know that if they shoot something crazy like 250 or 3,000, sometimes it happened that we got like people saying like 3,000 for a link. We know that that's not really realistic. So basically what people does is they shoot high. So we shoot like very, very low so that we can kind of meet somewhere in the middle. That's right. Like the whole strategy.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you know, whatever the first offer you get is just, it's the anchor offer anyway. Yeah. So when you were first starting out, explain how your team was when you started and where you are now, like the size, the infrastructure, where are you at now? And then also what are you focused on right now as far as your daily tasks?
So yeah, when I got started, it was basically just me for the first 2 clients. Then I started seeing that the work was getting a little bit too much, especially because I was trying to keep the quality very high. And so I was still doing a lot of kind of manual personalization in the emails. And so that's when I hired the first link prospector that was helping me finding and qualifying the sites, the targets basically. And I was still managing the emails. So the hardest part then was being able to delegate the email sending and managing. So finally, like I was kind of able, basically after working like 3 years, kind of on that affiliate website that I mentioned before, I had like a Google sheet of all of the possible kind of answer that I might need like to use like for emails, because at the end of the day, there's just like so many scenarios that can happen. It's not like unlimited. So either they say yes, either they say no. And if they say no, there's like something that you can offer in return and stuff like that. So I had like this Google sheet with all the possible negotiation kind of like replies and all of the templates that I normally used. And then I was finally able to delegate the email stuff to the first, I call them the outreach managers. So now I mainly have 2 roles, the link prospectors and the outreach managers. I have 2 link prospectors now in the Philippines and 2 outreach managers. I had 3 link prospectors last year, but then we scaled it down to 2 because we were able to do everything that we do with only 2. And then I hired a project manager as well that's helping me with all of the admin stuff. So some of the reporting as well, as I mentioned before. She's helping with processing like the payments for paid links, for example. So this kind of admin stuff that was really slowing me down in the beginning because I was working like on sales and marketing, and then I had to send a bunch of payments for paid links and then do the reporting. So it was a bunch of tasks that it was like really slowing me down. So I started working with the project manager sometime towards the end of last summer, I think. And we're now at the point where I basically only do sales and marketing. So for example, I might do like blog articles for our site. I might do some guest posting. I do cold email to find new clients. And then I still do like all of the systems and processes. So for example, last week I created the SOP for our monthly like reporting that we do, and for the weekly kind of emails that we do as well. So I'm slowly delegating like all of this stuff as well and trying to get me out of that so that I can work more and more on the sales side of things as well.
Right. Yeah. So you have begun the process of pulling yourself away from kind of the operational side, time-consuming stuff, but you're still wearing a few hats. I mean, marketing, sales, operations, and client relations too, to a certain extent. So, at what point do you think it'll be appropriate for you to bring on maybe like a salesperson to handle that side of things, or do you feel like it's always difficult because you always feel like you're the best at selling your product, right? So
I actually think that like the next person that I'm going to be hiring is more of like an SEO strategist, like director of strategy kind of role. So somebody that can also maybe do the sales calls with me, and then he can take over the strategy. So all the planning and yeah, basically the quarterly review calls and all of like the more strategic stuff as well. Like also doing the first step of every campaign for us is planning all of the keywords that we use for prospecting. That's something that sometimes I still do because I've had kind of a hard time delegating that like to the team members, because there's some level of strategy and skill involved in that. And so yeah, I really think that the next person is probably going to be someone like that. So somebody that can take away like even that last bit of strategy and planning that I still do, so that I can like focus on the sales. And then yeah, probably the salesperson is probably going to be like the last one that I hire.
Right. So how did you get, because obviously the hardest thing for most people to do is to hire, because you're always afraid that you're not going to be able to afford them and XYZ. So how did you get over that initial like fear of like, I need to bring someone on? Was it just out of pure necessity, or was it just like, what was your thought process?
So for me, like honestly, I've never been like really afraid of hiring. Like once I had a process that was like written down and was like straightforward to follow, and I had videos and written SOP as well, for me it was pretty kind of easy. So my usual process for hiring someone is I hire maybe like 3 people to do the same kind of test job, and then I see like the best one and I hire him. And so usually give them like a 2 weeks framework or something like that, and then I hire the best one. One thing that I also do is I want to make sure that they are basically a fit for our company like values kind of thing, because I really think that like for the most part it's important that like you work well with the person, and maybe like even if they are not like an expert, basically in what they need to do, like essentially they can learn that, while the human aspect is something that they can't learn. So I really want to find people that I work like together well with, and that they fit within the company kind of mindset that we have, so that it's fun to work with, that have a very good attention to detail. So these are kind of like the things that I'm looking for. And like everything else, yeah, basically they can learn with time, because I'm still available like to them. Like we talk together, I send them like video instruction, we work together on the first campaigns. So it's normal that they need like to learn the more technical stuff, but like the personality and all of that is something that needs to be right from the beginning, I think.
Right. That's a very good point. Having good fit. So is there a certain like threshold where you feel like you need to bring someone on? Like you hit a certain revenue number or a certain amount of clients where it's like, okay, we're busting at the seams here. We need to.
So my general kind of approach for this has always been to hire just a little bit before I see that we are reaching like the top. So essentially, like you can see kind of when you are like almost at the level where you can like do the work anymore. And so that's usually when I look, basically to hire someone else to help. So I try not to do it like when it's too late, because otherwise it's really difficult to keep up with all the work that we have. Right. So usually that comes a bit like before. And so, yeah, like even if I still don't have the level of revenue that I would like to have to be able to have this person, so what I do is maybe I take out like a lower salary for myself for the first month or so, and then it's going to be better like in the long term, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And it's so funny how that works. Like you just kind of find a way to make up that gap. It's always so fascinating, because I think one of the biggest challenges, and I know you said you're not afraid to hire, which is great because you're far ahead of most people, because that is always a challenging thing, because it ultimately comes down to just finances. You always feel like it's just, it's being responsible for someone's livelihood is a big deal, So getting over that is important. But I've seen in my own experience, and you've probably seen this too, like when you do finally take that leap of faith and you bring someone on, it just, you'll see a direct correlation with your revenue growth, because it's just getting you from not focusing on one thing and being able to do something else, that is worth the money alone.
Yeah.
So that's huge. So Let's talk a little bit about outreach success, because I feel like a lot of people, when they're doing link building, you hear it so often like, hey, I sent 50,000 emails and I got one reply. So, what is a good benchmark for what you would define as successful outreach, as far as people replying, as far as links actually getting placed? And then also talk a little bit about how you handle, the classic getting ghosted, which is probably most of the outreach. So
Yeah. So yeah, for the most part, we try to go for an approach that's not super high quantity. We are still doing things at basically like a low scale. So we send out probably anywhere from like 300 emails to 800 emails maybe per month for one client, and with those we're usually able to get to the 10-15 links kind of range.
Okay.
And for the most part we try to only get free links, but yeah, we still have to pay for some of them. So usually the paid versus free percentage is usually, like I would say that on 10 links with a good client it could be that like 30% is paid and the rest is free. And with a bad client, it can be that 80% is paid and the rest is free. So it really depends. And with like good and bad clients, I mean like really the quality of the content, the kind of like data that they have that we can use to pitch the content to other people. So sometimes, yeah, we might work with a client that maybe on paper was a good client. So they have like all the qualification that we look at in the beginning. But then you keep working with them and you see that they are keeping like on publishing content that's targeting like the same keywords every time. So it's really difficult for you to find new prospects like moving forward, because you're targeting the same topics, and so you're reaching out to the same people like all the time. And like with same people, I don't mean the same exact website, but I mean people that are talking about the same stuff. Right. So it's really like you really need to have the ability to expand like your prospect pool going forward. So really being able to cover all of the 3 stages of the funnel with your content, top, the middle, and the bottom as well, so that you can, so basically that we can keep prospecting and finding new websites that are publishing articles on the topic that we are interested in. And so, yeah, with bad and good clients, I mean, like a good client is someone that's publishing maybe 4 new articles per month, targeting very good keywords. The content is really kind of in depth and fresh with like a new data. And a bad client is someone that's maybe publishing 4 articles per month, but maybe on those 4, 1 is targeting good keywords, and the other 3 are articles like, hey, this month we released this feature for the software. So stuff that you can't really use for link building. And so, yeah, that kind of forces us to look inside like database that we built, because like working in the past 3 years, we were able to build like a little database of sites that can kind of work with us on a, basically like a recurring basis for software companies. But yeah, like it's usually better to be able to find fresh websites instead of going back to the database. So we always try to prioritize like a new outreach, a new website that we can get links from, basically.
Okay, that's good to know. And as far as outreach that goes on deaf ears, are you continually sending follow-ups, or is it kind of like just a one-shot type of thing and then you just move on to the next?
So yeah, we tried like a little bit of everything. In the first few years, we were doing like 4 follow-ups. So the first email was like a semi-personalized kind of email. Second follow-up maybe was a very short kind of just checking in follow-up. The third one, maybe we send them like some kind of other link that maybe like was interesting for them. So even if it wasn't like our client's article, somebody else's article that maybe could be interesting for them, just to show them that we like wanted to provide value and were like interested in the topic. And then the last one was maybe a follow-up like after 1 or 2 months, which like usually could be something like, hey, I was just scrolling through my emails and I noticed that you never replied. So are you like maybe still interested? in this and something like that. But yeah, we've seen that this wasn't really working that well. So what we're doing now is just basically one, maximum two follow-ups. So we just do the very quick follow-up, which like sometimes can only be just like hey, did you see this? Stop. So something like super simple like that maybe surprises them because it's not the usual follow-up. And the last one, we still try doing the one that's like a month after or something like that, just because we don't want to keep spamming people, because we think that maybe, if you send like 3 follow-ups and they are all in a matter of like 2 weeks, people might get kind of angry at you, and so they mark your your email as spam, and that kind of degrades the deliverability of the account, which then it's really hard to get back. So we try to really be careful with that stuff as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I get hammered with link requests quite a bit, and it's crazy because they'll email me every single day, and I'm like, do you think that I'm actually gonna like do something with this? It's so bizarre. And one thing I love to think about when it comes to link building is a win-win situation, right? So I feel like there's a lot of people who do outreach and they don't think in win-wins. They think in like, we get all the benefit and you don't really get a whole lot of anything. So have you tried to, where have you tried to optimize that the most? I know you said you're obviously money is always the greatest value proposition, but you try to avoid that because you don't want to be paying for links. So what are some other value propositions where you feel like it is a fair win-win exchange of value ultimately?
So as I said, the fact that we work with software companies for the most part means that we can offer the product like itself as something in return. So we might offer a link, like either a link exchange. Sometimes that's usually the offer that comes before the money, but for the most part is like a free trial of the software or an extended kind of account, like free account, or even affiliate links, so that if they place the link inside the content, then they can also get like an affiliate percentage from that. So it's all of this. It's basically trying to leverage the product itself as a way to give them something in return, especially if they are a blogger that writes about maybe sales and our clients is a cold email software or like a B2B database kind of software that might be useful for them as well. So usually that works like really well. The main thing is that you really need to be targeted and be sure that you find the right people that might be interested in the software.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a couple more questions, and I'll have some members have some questions here, so we'll go to those in a second. One thing I love to ask people who work with clients is, how do you deal with the tough ones?
So the tough ones, it's a very good question. I mean, we do have a few clients that are like the micromanaging type, which is very difficult to handle. What I try to do is just like trying to be very calm, like at all times. So even if it looks like the request is stupid, that it doesn't make sense, that they are asking way too much for what they're paying for, I still try to secondate them. So I try to reply to what they say, but the main thing is I try to keep some boundaries, like from the moment that they maybe send the emails. Like, for example, I might wait like 2-3 hours just to cool down, to really think about my reply and to make it in a way that it sounds good to them, that for one, that I don't sound angry, because I don't want them to see me as like somebody that gets upset, basically. So I try to handle with them in like a stoic fashion, basically. That's what I try to do. And basically, like every bad client that's doing this kind of thing, it's an experience for me to learn and to better qualify clients so that I don't get clients like this, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And it certainly helps with the qualification to prevent that, but sometimes some slip through the cracks.
Yeah, you can never know.
Yeah, because sometimes they'll be totally cool in the beginning, and then you get into the campaign, you're like, "Whoa, this is not the person I remember I talked to." So, have you had to let any clients go as well?
So for this specific reason, no, I still haven't. There's one that I might be about to, but I don't want to say. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so far, no, I still haven't. Like, it still didn't get to the point that it's so bad that I can't handle it anymore.
Right.
Basically, so I've always tried to make it work so far. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it probably helps because like when you're doing full on SEO campaigns, there's just a lot of focus on the results, and obviously SEO results take time. So, you have clients that, you're 2 months in, they're like, why am I not number one? Even though I've never done SEO ever, and I'm competing against people that have been doing it for 12 years. It just doesn't make logical sense, but that's the stuff you kind of have to deal with. But ultimately, I think the way that you're approaching it is the best. You're taking full accountability. So, if a client is upset, there's probably 80% of the time, it's something that you could have fixed in the process to prevent that from happening. 20% of the time, there's nothing you can do. There's just some people who are looking for a way out. They don't actually want to commit to the campaign. You probably maybe saw a little bit of hesitancy in the sales process, but you're like, well, we need to get this revenue. So you went through with it.
Exactly.
But I think what you're doing that's a good way to do it for sure.
Yeah. And sometimes like another thing that I try to do is put myself in their shoes.
Right.
So as I said, for example, for the most part, we work with marketing managers or people that are working basically underneath like somebody else that's kind of like managing them. So they need to report to other people. And so sometimes I realize that they might be under some kind of pressure. And so if our results are kind of slow and we didn't do a good job in communicating with them and in letting them know like what's happening and why the results are a bit slow, I do realize that, maybe they might be upset because they need to report to their like manager or something. And so, I try to kind of put myself in their shoes and know that we basically try to calm them and basically explain how we're going to fix the situation so that they can look good in the eyes of the people that are managing them as well.
Right. Yeah. And I think, it seems like what you're saying is also taking kind of just the emotion out of it. So like waiting the 2 to 3 hours, you're pulling the emotion away from it. And that's so important. Like, being emotional about these things is never good. Like in the beginning, when I was doing it, like I would get so mad. I'd be like, you're done. Like I just you're fired. Like I don't even care. But then I realized over time, like I need to just like, this is not a personal thing, right? These are not personal attacks. This is just business, and you just need to treat it like it's business. And like, that's just the way it's got to be. And just removing as much emotion as you can out of it.
Exactly.
So it can only really benefit. So I think having that kind of buffer there when you get get that email. Okay. Yeah. So let me fire a couple more questions at you. What would you say, if you had to pick, was the biggest thing that enabled you to get beyond $10,000 per month?
Beyond $10,000. So that was a good kind of barrier. And I think the thing that helped us there was the personal brand for us. So for me, the fact that, like you can see, like beyond me, there's all of the 80s movies. So I really try to like really emphasize the personal brand for us, all of the 80s stuff. It's kind of like our kind of image. So it's fun, it's young. So it's also something that kind of helps me like pre-qualify clients, because I know that if somebody's reaching out to me and maybe like in the email, they say, hey, like I love your website, it looks cool and stuff like that. So I know that that's somebody that I might like to work with. So that's like a pre-qualifier as well. Right. But it also really helped in differentiating us and basically like taking us apart from all of the other vendors, where maybe it's like the usual kind of boring SEO link building theme. So we really try to be like to stand apart and kind of stand out from like the crowd of link building vendors as well. And it also something that allowed me to making myself seen in a few like groups as well. So I'm part of a lot of like different private channels, like your group as well. So the fact that people, when they see me and my brand, they kind of remembers it. because it's a bit different than anything else. It's something that really helps in them, like remembering. So for example, maybe there's a client that's working for me and they talk to a friend and their friend is like, hey, we need a link building. And I've seen this link building guy for SaaS with the website that looks like an 80s movie, you know? So it's something that's kind of easy to remember.
Right.
And it really helped us spread the word a lot. And that's kind of how we scaled up in the beginning, I think.
Yeah, that's one thing I think you've done such a good job on. You have totally differentiated yourself from everyone else, and that is so important because there's so many copycats, so many people that just try to do everything else that everyone else is doing. And if you can find any way to differentiate yourself, not just the product that you offer, but also the branding too, man, it makes all the difference. And that's
I mean, it's the same thing that we were talking about like in the beginning with the content. If you can do something that's different, that kind of stands out from everything else, that usually works in one way or another.
Yeah. And I think just across the board, like everything, like if you can differentiate everything, it really is huge. But yeah, that's a really great answer. So what is your big goal and vision for where you want to go from, who's Alan in 5 years from now, and where's the company going to be?
So I always kind of struggle with these questions. Like even when I do my yearly planning and all that stuff,
right?
There's usually the question like, what do you want to achieve in like 3-5 years? So yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I guess for now I'm just letting my short-term goals kind of guiding the whole process. And for the most part, I really just try to enjoy the progress and the process in getting to like the next goal, basically. So I essentially try to use goals as a way for me to keep moving, to keep things interesting, and to have fun for the most part. So I really want to, basically that's like my main goal, to have a business that's fun to run, that gives me the freedom to do the other things that I like doing. And that's, I mean, like the main goal. And sometimes it can be like I want to get to X revenue per month because I need to do that, or because I want to do that, and something like that, basically. But I'm not really too fixated on specific goals because I really just try to enjoy the progress and the process.
Very stoic of you.
I try.
No, and I think that's super important. I think we get too wrapped up in 3 to 5 years from now, but in reality, you don't know what's going to happen in that amount of time. So we really just need to be acting in today. So that's a very good point. Since you don't really think about goals a whole lot, I don't know if I should even ask you this question, but I am interested, just shorter term goal, like for the year, like do you have a certain like amount of clients, or just like a certain goals that you want to hit as far as operationally?
So we are now at about like $25,000-$30,000 per month. And so the goal for the year is to get to 50. And that's just because I think with like $50,000 per month, it's the kind of revenue that would allow me to hire the strategy person and also maybe the salesperson. So that's kind of like the next step for me to really kind of remove myself from those two extra things, so that then I can think about the next step. Basically.
Right. That's a great target. So if we think back to 2017, when you were really just kind of getting early on in this journey, what would be your advice for someone who was, at that point? If you can look back and be like, man, I wish I would have done X earlier. What would that be?
I mean, like for myself, really the fact that I started doing one thing, which is link building, and I got really passionate about it. I think it's something that really helped me. So I would say try to find something that you really enjoy doing and try to focus on that thing and try to make that one thing work. And then maybe you can explore like other things. And another good advice is probably try to stay away from the shiny objects, because I've been there. I tried a bunch of different things and none worked. And then I stumbled upon link building and I really enjoyed it. And I decided to really focus on it and make it work, because I noticed that other people were making it work. And so I said, why not me? So I guess that's the main advice. Try to find the one thing that you enjoy doing and that is gonna make you work on it for the longer term, so that you can build something sustainable. Basically.
Right. That's great advice. So let me fire a couple of these questions at you from the members, and then we'll get you off. Let's see. Okay, how do you promote your services and acquire new clients? You've kind of gotten into that, so you don't have to go too deep. But have you done any traffic acquisition campaigns or word of mouth?
No. So for the most part, the only kind of systematic things that I've done so far is a bunch of podcast interviews. And basically all of these are podcasts like where my target market is. So SaaS podcast, as I said before, and some guest posting on some platforms where my target market goes. So those are the only two things that I really started doing like recently in a kind of a systematized way. But yeah, nothing else. The rest is all like referrals and word of mouth and friends and stuff like that.
Okay. Here's a question from Ian. Actually, Ian has a few questions, so we'll start with the first one. At the onboarding stage, do you identify what your clients' metrics, their company tracks, other than only sales, and relate with? I guess he's asking what metrics are you looking at for the clients that you're working with and the companies that you're working with? I guess on their end, is there anything in particular?
So yeah, we like part of the qualification kind of things that we look at. We also want to work with companies that have some traffic. So not like some really super early stage software companies that maybe didn't even reach like product market fit yet.
What if quick question on that. What if they have funding?
So yeah, that's another good thing that usually helps. Okay. The main thing that we look at is that they have reached like product market fit. So they have something unique that they can offer to the market. So for example, a few companies that we really don't like working with is maybe companies that are like a copycat of some other like more famous software, because then it's really hard for us to pitch the content to people basically when the main competitor is essentially the same but better, like 10 times better. So we try to find companies that are somehow kind of unique, that are also maybe fun, that have a good brand, that is nice to promote for us as well. So we work with a really good company, which is Podia, which is like the course platform.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're doing a great job with like the content that they do, really good, fun brand for creators. So they really like specialize in a very specific kind of target market that they serve. And so those are usually the company that we like to work with. But yeah, for the most part, in terms of metrics, nothing too specific. We want to see that they have some kind of traffic, that they have the content published on their blog, at least 5 to 10 articles. And yeah, like anything else, like doesn't really matter. Like I think our longest term clients, and we're just in the process of publishing the case study for them, which is going to be on our site. They started in 2018, and they're still working with us now. Nice. They started when they had a domain rating 16 or something like that, and they're now 71. And wow. Traffic went up like a lot. So we're really happy about them. And that kind of shows, it really shows the fact that you really need to be like in this for the long term, and you cannot like think about link building as like a 3-month thing, because it doesn't really work otherwise.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Another question here from Ian is, how did you manage to find the right people to work with you, and what strategies did you use to locate and select those people?
So for location, I mean, I knew from the beginning, because I was talking to other friends, that the Philippines is a good place for finding people that are very good with like mechanical kind of tasks, that are like very good with details. So these guys are like super good with details. They actually enjoy like being told like exactly what to do. They need a written process to follow, and they are really happy to do that. So that's like the perfect fit for my link prospectors, basically. So I've started working with the first one in the Philippines, and I found him on Upwork. And then basically what happened is that he knew like friends or like family members. So the next one that we hired was actually his cousin or someone like that. And then we worked with his friends. So he kind of like started recommending other people, and they were also like really good as well. So so the thing that really helped me with the hiring process is that like I found the first person for the specific job, and then they kind of helped me like finding friends or people they could recommend that they knew that was already doing something similar. And then the other thing that was really good is that I basically put them in charge of training that person. So instead of being me to train the new person, like basically the existing team members were like training the new person, basically like in the same job that they were doing. And so there was less work and less kind of stress for me as well. So that's kind of how I manage the hiring and training process. And I also usually get them to actually write like their own their own kind of SOPs, so that when we hire somebody new, we already have them ready and they can send them to them directly. So I kind of try to take myself out of the training process as well.
That's super smart, because I'm sure you've experienced this before, but when you actually have to teach someone else something, your skill becomes more refined. So like by you having team members teaching each other, they're all actually, the rising tide lifts all ships. So they're all getting better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. And the other thing that I noticed is that after a while, when I wasn't doing the prospecting or the outreach anymore, I noticed that my team members were actually starting to get better than me at doing the actual thing.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's another point where, it's actually better for them to train the new person instead of me, since I'm kind of like out of the process now, and I don't really know like all the ins and outs like perfectly as they know. So
right, yeah, that's terrific. Ian has another question here. Out of curiosity, with search engines constantly innovating and changing the game, what are your thoughts on the future of links and how it might evolve, and how might this influence how you carry out the business that you're currently working on?
So in terms of the future of links, I really think links are not going anywhere, especially because Google has become really good at differentiating between a good link and a bad link. So the good links are still very, very hard to get. You really need to put in the work. And if you try to automate stuff, it's not going to end up like well. So you really need to do the manual work sometimes to get the very good links. And so I think that as long as this kind of quality and difference like criteria for Google is in place, and they can still find out like which links are the good ones, I think the links are going to stay and they're going to be as important as they've always been.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. Well, I think that's it, man. Those are all the questions. I've hammered you with questions here. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, I think that's it. Well, thank you so much, Alan. This is awesome. It's so cool to hear such a unique method that you're using to grow a company. And I actually used, I think it's maybe last week, I used your agency as one of the examples of what people should be doing,
cool.
Trying to think through like how to niche down. And I think you're doing such an awesome job. So
nice. Thanks a lot, Nathan. It's been great.
Yeah.
It's been fun, and I learned a lot from you. And it's good to share like the knowledge that I've gotten in the past like 2-3 years of doing this stuff. It's always good to kind of help like people that are starting now, maybe. So it's good. And if anybody has other questions, like feel free to message me on Facebook. I'm always there and available. So
Right, yeah. And you're in the group, and obviously if they want to learn more about your link building, where can they go? Your link building.
We have the website, which is mygrowthgorilla.com, and then people can find me on Twitter at Alan G Gorilla, which sounds like a testosterone pill, but it's my Twitter handle.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And also, you guys, just even if you don't need link building this time, just go to his website and just analyze what he's doing. He's totally a good, it's what you should be thinking about how to differentiate. Super, super awesome. So
thank you. So I mean, like the website, even if it's something that I've done by myself, I never hire like a designer or anything. Like I just knew some very basic Photoshop skills. To create my logo, I went and found a YouTube tutorial, and I've done that myself in 15 minutes. And everything else, like the main thing that it's important that I really like on my website, and I think that has been working well, is the homepage, where I basically try to show people like graphically what we do. That's been really important in finding the right clients. And it's something that I found out and that I figure out by doing customers interviews, like at the beginning.
Right.
So I reached out to a bunch of SaaS kind of founders and I asked them like what their goals were, what they were looking for. And that kind of helped me, basically actually using their, like their own words inside the copy of the website so that they can kind of see themselves.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. And also demonstration is way better than telling. So I think that's super smart. You did that. Well, good, man. All right. Well, we'll be talking soon. And when you get to that 50,000 and then $100,000 mark, we can jump back on again. Okay.
All right. Cool. Thanks a lot, Nathan.
Okay. Talk to you soon, man. Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.